You're listening to the Silver Stoner Show.
Hey dudes and dudettes, it's me, Uncle Herb, and this is another edition of the Silver Stoner. As you see the 5 tenets of being a stoner up on the screen, you understand that what we are doing here is redefining what it means to be a stoner and creating a community of the creative and the open. You don't have to be stoned to be a stoner, although it really, really helps. Okay, what can I say? To be open and creative, I find that weed opens me up, but, that's up to you. Today, before I get into all the other crap I'm going to talk about, it's not crap, but all the other valuable things, I have to be careful because, I'm like a cross between a sailor and an intellectual. So I'm a foul-mouthed moron, so I don't know. Anyway, I want to discuss the tenet that says no one can control my thoughts or feelings but me. And the reason that I want to discuss that is because of today's cancel culture, which I don't know about you, but it's driving me crazy. I saw today, there's a kid on the television show American Idol. Now, I got to be honest with you, I don't really watch American Idol, but when I saw this story, I went to check it out. This kid is a teenager. He's from the Deep South. His name is Wade something or other. And it's unimportant who, he himself is unimportant. I'm just using him. I mean, he's important to his family and he's important to a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. But when he was 14, and remember the kid is today, I think 17, he made some video where he was sitting next to a guy wearing a Klan hood. Now, look, that's fucked up. But he was a 14-year-old, and I want to share with you just why I wouldn't necessarily cancel him and why you don't have to listen to everybody else's crap, okay? Just follow my reasoning. When I was in prison, I met a lot of skinheads and Aryan brothers, and they were covered from head to toe with swastikas and SS symbols and CWB tattooed all over the place, which means crazy white boy and all kinds of crazy racist shit. And yet, I met hundreds of them, and I can count the actual racists that I met among the Aryan brothers at one. Okay, I met one actual honest-to-God Nazi. The rest became Aryan brothers because of peer pressure, because when they went into prison, this was the group that would protect them against being attacked, raped, what goes on in prison. By the way, the whole time I was in prison, I never saw anybody raped. I think that happens on the crazy places. But, anyway, that's neither here nor there. A lot of the Aryan brothers, they just do it out of peer pressure. This kid is 14 years old in some small town somewhere, and some schmuck he was sitting next to thought it would be funny to put on a Klan hood, and it is not funny. I say this both as a Jew and as a strong supporter of anti-racism. I mean, come on. But he's 14. I think everyone in the world should get a free pass for every dumb fucking thing they've done before they turn 21. Personally, I just, and so he's off American Idol. He's done. His dream is squashed, and life will go on and other things will happen. What's good is bad and bad is good, and perhaps this disappointment will lead to other things, but it could also embitter him, and it could also turn him into a racist when he was never inclined that way. I mean, as far as I can tell on American Idol, it's not a racist show. It's very diverse. I checked it out. It's, why? When do we loosen up? And so I gave it that a lot of thought, and I've come to the conclusion that American cancel culture is a result of going too far with feminizing our society. Now, I want you to hear clearly what I'm saying. I'm not a misogynist. I'm the father of 2 powerful daughters, and I wish I didn't even have to say all that kind of crap in the culture that we live in. But here's the thing: when men are mad at each other, take Mastery, true or false? If you and I were mad at each other, we'd get real aggressive real fast, right? I'd say fuck you. You'd say fuck me back. If it got a little bad, we might even punch each other. And then after it was all over, 9 out of 10 times we can, basically make up and call it a day, let it go. That's a very male way of dealing with conflict, right? Men deal with conflict aggressively to the face of, I'm talking about real men. When I say real men, alpha men. I mean, I know there are beta men, but the men that you would marry if you're a woman watching, the man that you would find attractive is the same man who, if someone were to insult you in public or insult him or go after he would take Mastery, true or false, go right in the guy's face and say, back off. Yeah, I've done it. I have personally laid hands on somebody bothering a child. Okay, I once saw a guy knocking the crap out of his kid, and I grabbed the guy by the hair and threw him on the ground. That's a very male thing to do, okay? Women character assassinate. And I think, and when I say that, it's by rumor and innuendo. Not all women. But when women, because not all women want to get wrapped up, but when women feel that they're wronged, tell me, women, chime in on this. I mean, I hate that facts are facts. They may be inconvenient. They may not be politically correct, but I have never known a woman in my life, even my delightful ex-wife, who I adore, okay, if she felt wrong, she would never react hostilely. It would be rumor, innuendo, accusation, feeling hurt, all that's what, and then they talk to each other. And I think this is what accounts for, and this is well researched. You can Google this. I'm not going to put up charts, but the teenage female suicide rate, because social media has magnified this. There's so much character assassination of young girls going on in social media by other young girls that if you were to see the suicide rate, it was flat through the baby boom and the millennials, but then it hit Gen Z, and now it's skyrocketing. And the year it began to skyrocket, and when I say skyrocket, I mean it's running like it's 700% of what it was even 10 years ago. I think it's because social media is magnifying the way that women rumor and innuendo each other, and they take it so goddamn personally that they kill themselves. And we need to find, just dial it back. Become a stoner. Stop it. And I'm not speaking to women when I say this. I'm talking about social media. We have to find a way to shield our daughters from this shit, and as a society move a little bit back towards masculinity, and masculinity in the sense that when you're wronged, just say you're wronged. Let's not get into the cancellation. That's what cancellation is feeling that you're hurt, and you start spreading rumors, and you start with the innuendo, and if he said this, he might say that. I saw an engineer got fired at Apple today, a big engineer. Did you see that story? This guy Martinez? And he gets fired. I read what he wrote. What he wrote was, and I'm paraphrasing, he wrote this in his autobiography. Evidently, this guy, I think is Angel Martinez was his name, Angel Garcia Martinez. Latino names, they hyphenate. It's the mother's maiden name comes second. I really should have called him Garcia. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is, what he wrote was that this is not a direct quote, but it's pretty close. Bay Area women are so cosseted, which is a fancy word for protected, and primping, and they think they're so forward, but they're really full of shit. Okay, that's what he wrote. Now that got him fired from Apple because hundreds and hundreds of Apple women started a smear campaign against this guy, okay, and said they couldn't work with this kind of hostility. I didn't raise my girls to be this weak, and I hope that you're not this weak. But guys, no one can control your thoughts or feelings but you. Okay, number one, if you're watching me, and you shouldn't be, by the way, if you're a young teenage girl, but if you have young teenage daughters, pass this on, because this is an adult show they don't belong on. But here's the deal. You got to raise them to be tough. And when they hear this stuff, they got to learn to slough it off. And the best way I have found to do that is two things. Number one, you got to restrict social media. You got to restrict social media. And number two, when I say restrict, I mean before they're in high school, there should be no social media. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about this. How do you feel about this? You're the father of a daughter, Tech Mastery.
Yeah, and she's on social media.
But Leno is how old is she now? She's what, 17? Well, and I know her. She's a powerful. I mean, does this affect her?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And my daughter's.
She separates it very well.
See, and my youngest daughter's 26, so she's a millennial, and she missed it. But God, they're just destroying the girls, and it's all this rumor and innuendo and social media. Meanwhile, boys, interestingly enough, the suicide rate hasn't budged. Okay, not at all. And the reason it hasn't budged is because boys just say "fuck you." You can't rumor a boy. I mean, if a boy finds out that another boy has said something about him, he'll go punch him in the face. It's not going to turn into a tit for tat, or mostly just slough it off. I don't want to add. Thank you, Tech Mastery. I'm a stoner, man. When I say I've been violent, that was once, and I also was violent once in prison, and that's about it, However, as an alpha male, I am clear in confrontation. Don't fuck with me, and I think that's a healthy thing to be. We all live our lives and we all suffer scars, but we got to toughen up, because if you raise your kids to think that someone saying something offensive about them is somehow an aggression, they're going to have a miserable fucking life. And just, again, look at the suicide rates of Gen Z girls. It's just mind-blowing to me. So anyway, enough of this, but turn off the social media, empower your girls, and spread the word. We got to go back to confrontation when you're really, and then have a discussion about it. Confront the issue and talk about it. Don't start with the rumors and the innuendo and the destruction. That's all I have to say about that for today. That's for today. By tomorrow, it'll be something to, yeah, who the fuck knows? Someone else will get fired tomorrow. I'll have a different story to talk about. By the way, I didn't really have this in today's lineup of Silver Stoner News. I just found this fascinating. Yesterday, one of the news items I had was there's a tiger that got lost in Houston. It's still lost. They haven't found it.
It's still lost?
Where?
They found it.
They didn't find it.
Oh.
It's loose in Houston. How the fuck? This is a full-grown Bengal tiger. Where?
Kitty.
The reason tigers are, this is a little trivia, okay? You know me, a digression. The reason tigers are orange and black and white is because their primary prey can't see those colors. Okay, so in the wild, where they're out there stalking the little, whatever the hell, little deers and the antelope are playing, whatever the hell they are, it's because when the tiger is set against the green backdrop, evidently they just blend into it. But a human being sees orange and black and white. How are we not finding this? I don't get how you.
Where would it hide?
It's about an 800-pound tiger.
Where would it hide?
Fuck if I know.
And it's,
I know. I do know. Prison. It orange and black and. No, it's not in prison. Anyway, by the way, I swore I'd never wear orange again for the rest of my life, and so far I've kept my word. Okay. When I said it, not even recreationally, I love oranges to eat, but I'm not wearing it ever again. Just saying. All right. On to the news I really wanted to talk about. A pair of, and I've said that the words Democrat and Republican are off limit, but when they do something nice, I'm going to mention it. A pair of Republican lawmakers have introduced a bill to federally legalize marijuana, protect banks that serve as state legal cannabis business, and ensure military veterans are specifically permitted to use marijuana in compliance with state laws. The Common Sense Reform for Veterans, Small Businesses, and Medical Professionals Act. Don't you love those names they give that? The Common Sense Cannabis Reform for Veterans, Small Business, and that doesn't even make a good acronym. It doesn't work. But anyway, it's a nice name. It's being sponsored by Representatives David Joyce, who's a Republican from Ohio. So if you're watching in his district, send him a kudo. And Don Young, who's a Republican from Arkansas. Now, the reason that I like this, these guys are in the House of Representatives, and the Democrats have, I think, an 8 or 12 vote majority. So this is going to pass. Now, if we can get a couple of Republican senators to get a brain, we could actually get banking cleared up and stop using ATM fees when we go to the dispensary. And I think that would be great, personally. Although, as I said yesterday, I'll give you another tip. If you guys are military connected, Navy Federal Credit Union reimburses ATM fees.
What's a service state legal cannabis business?
A dispensary. See, they're federally illegal, right? So technically, like in the last administration, when the Orange Man was president, before we had Joe Senile, when the Orange Man was president, he had this guy as attorney general who clearly had watched too many copies of Reefer Madness. What was his name? Not Barr. No, Barr was a good guy, actually. He got an unfair bless. Who was the guy before Barr? Jeff Sessions, the Alabama senator. Yeah, he was a real maniac. Again, that's my opinion, not a fact. And, I'm open to discussion. I'm a stoner man. But from my perspective, anyway, he was interesting. And he just had a hard-on for weed. But he's gone now. And the current Attorney General, who is Neil Gorsuch, who would have been on the Supreme Court if the Republicans didn't fuck over President Obama. When I say that, again, sounds like I'm taking a side. I don't know if he's qualified or not. I just think if you're president and the Constitution says you can appoint a guy, stalling it for 8 months or whatever the fuck it was strikes me as hugely unfair. And it's not that I agree with President Obama or disagree or anything else or who he selected or Neil Gorsuch, but come on, man. Here's the rules. Let's play by them, and then life goes back to the order instead of the chaos. It dawned on me today, by the way. Tank Master, you're old enough to remember this. Doesn't this feel like the 1970s coming back? I mean, we got yeah,
recycle.
Right. Even tie-dye's back. Tie-dye's back. I've even seen some bell-bottom shit. But now we've got inflation, high gas prices and gas shortages, artificially created, and a general. I say inflation's back, right? And a general sense of nothing's working right. It's the 70s all over again. All right, well, let's hope we get somebody who knows what they're doing next time around. But anyway, Neither here nor there. Okay, moving right along. This story I entitled "They Never Get It." It turns out, and I saw this in an article in the Wall Street Journal, and that's where the image comes from. You're seeing cheating is out of control online, and to which I say, "What a surprise!" You know, And wait? Let me say it the way I wanted to say it. What a surprise! No, that was too. What a surprise! What a surprise! I'm not a good actor. I can't do down, right? I can't do it. I cannot flatten my voice that way. I just get deeper. What a surprise, Surprise. Look, if you open the door to cheating, they're going to cheat. Not because they're bad kids, but because the people who put this whole learn at home thing together and kept kids out of school when none of them die of COVID, literally none, unless they're morbidly obese and have type 1 diabetes and are on their deathbed anyway. And I don't mean to make light of that, but a lot of people of all ages who died of COVID were all on their way out the door anyway. And again, I don't advocate not protecting those people, but I'm saying we just grotesquely overreacted. And so we kept our kids out of school and they went home and I can tell you from my grandson, he doesn't cheat, I don't think. But if he does, I won't know because kids are fucking clever. And the people are selling. There's plenty of vendors. You see from the graphic, you'll see the graphic. There's plenty of people out there selling term papers, homework. I mean, and I don't blame them because you create the government once again, just like they did with weed. And let me just tie this to weed. This is a classic example of not thinking this shit all the way through. One of the primary benefits of legalization of weed is to get rid of the black market, right? I mean, the whole idea is if you open up and legalize something that's been illegal, it should get much, much cheaper, and therefore it should both benefit the public and reduce crime because you won't have to steal to afford your weed. Or weed is a bad example of this, but like heroin, if heroin were legal, the production cost of heroin, I've shared with you before because I got it from my cartel friends in prison, is about 5% of what it sells for on the street. So if heroin were legal, its price would plummet if it were truly legalized. But that's not what we're doing. We're doing the classic government fuck-up. We're sort of legalizing. Here in Arizona, for example, and you can relate it to your own state, we have if you're medical, you get one price, but if you're recreational, you pay 24% more. Why? So what are you telling to the recreational guys? For exactly the same plan. And some of it isn't even available. So like, for example, and I won't name the dispensary, but at one dispensary that I go to, and maybe this is at all the dispensaries, this is my regular dispensary, they have certain products that are medical only that have high THC concentrations. So for example, there's a product that I like called Haze, and Haze makes cannabis-infused chocolate, okay? And if you buy the 100-milligram Haze bar, you can buy it recreationally but pay 24% more than you would if you were buying it medically. But if you buy the medical, if you want 250 milligrams, you have to have a medical card. So what are you telling the recreation? So they got to buy 2.5 bars at 24% more. So here's what really happens, okay? People are still buying weed from their dealers. Now, I'm not because I don't want to fuck with the law and I never want to wear orange again. But I got to tell you, it's a very low-risk thing to do. And I'm sure a lot of you stoners watching me right now are still buying weed from your dealer because it's not cheaper from the dispensary. Now, you know what you're getting, okay? But from a good dealer, you know what you're getting. And I got to be honest with you. Weed is kind of like pizza. It's hard to have bad weed. I mean, really bad. I'm talking. Yeah, but I have to tell you, I've been smoking since I was 14 years old. I have smoked some real shit, and I still got high. I mean, short of smoking oregano because your friends are trying to fake you out when you're a kid, which was a gag, right? Back in still now probably, but, it's like when I'm really stoned and I want to eat pizza and I just can barely operate and I don't really want to go out and get one and I don't want to pay the money for the delivery and all that kind of crap, I'll throw a Tombstone in the oven, and the Tombstone doesn't taste like, the delivery from New York Pizza down the street, right? But it's pretty fucking good. I'm stoned and it's got tomato sauce and cheese and it tastes good to me, right? Red Baron, Freshetta is my favorite, just to throw that out there. But whatever brand it is that you like, it's okay. It's not delivery. DiGiorno's ads are bullshit. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. I personally find DiGiorno to be an inferior.
Back to the cheater.
Okay, I'm going off. I was dwelling into my pizza preferences. Sorry about that, gang. Anyway, enough about that shit. Okay, where was it? Oh, this story really interested me. Check this graphic out. Mass extinction has taken place in the human gut. I shit you not. Isn't that clever? I came up with that. Did you like that? I shit you not. Okay, it turns out that over 2 million types of bacteria have gone extinct in the human gut. And I'm pretty sure this is caused by human lifestyle, and therefore I advocate that the entire planet change its diet according to what I tell it. No, I'm conflating it with climate change. Sorry. Anyway, mass extinction in the human gut. I shit you not. Guys, when you hear these statistics, the reason I even did this story, besides it's funny, is about 99% of every species that has ever lived in the history of the planet is extinct. Species go extinct all the time. It's not always human beings that do it. Okay, sometimes it is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm not a denier. I'm a naturalist. I'm outdoors. Tech Mastery, you know me. I'm out a lot, right? Me and my dog, we're campers, hikers, all that kind of shit, right? But here's the thing, guys. You know, you can't freak out. You know, human beings are natural too, and the word isn't hubris. What's the word I'm thinking of? Where human beings think we're at the center of everything. It's what's the word for that? God damn it, I can't draw. Okay, I'm having a brain fart, but there's actually one of those 4-syllable words for this that'll come to me as I'm sitting here. But it's human beings are not behind everything that takes place on planet Earth. She's a big planet. Okay, if you took every human being on Earth, and this is a true statement, again, Google it and look it up. You can always fact check me, guys. I never talk bullshit, at least not knowingly. Okay, so if we took every single living human being on the planet today and we gave them their own little 3-bedroom, 2-bath, typical 1,500 square foot ranch house on the typical approximately 7,500 square foot lot that the typical ranch house comes on, we could fit the entire population of the planet in Texas. The whole thing. Everybody. China, Russia. That's how big, first of all, Texas is fucking huge. We could do it in Alaska too, but we have a lot of ground left over. The point is, there's not enough of us to affect the whole fucking planet. It seems like it because we're the only species that never shuts the fuck up. Okay, but we don't cause the extinction of everything. We don't destroy everything. It's not, when I hear the arguments, never mind. I was going to digress. I'm not going there. Okay, next. This story I happen to love. If you guys have never heard of the Darwin Award, the Darwin Award goes to idiots who basically damn near kill themselves or do kill themselves doing something so incredibly stupid you can't believe it. And they need to be basically evolved out of existence. And I say this with love. I would never advocate the death of a human being. Guys, that was a joke. Okay, so these college students built this unseaworthy craft. I almost said craft. Yeah. I'm reading this directly. By using duct tape to lash together 20 Home Depot buckets and 2 plastic kiddie pools on a piece of plywood. These guys were college students at the University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB. Now, they must have, to get into, okay, I've been to UCSB, and I have to be honest, it's a party school. Okay, I didn't attend UCSB, by the way. I've been on the campus. It is, in my opinion, the most beautiful college campus that I've been on. Now, it's what you call beautiful. Like, I've been on the campus of Harvard, and it's nice, but it's not, to me, it's like, okay, how much fucking ivy can you look at? And I'm not a big fan of big northeastern cities, right? So to me, walking through a heavily treed, green, beautiful oceanside, literally oceanside, it's like on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. It's just gorgeous, right? But they're not teaching their kids anything. These fucking kids, Jesus Christ. I only brought that up because, I don't know, it was silly. All right, moving right along. Ellen DeGeneres has announced that she's ending her show. And the reason she gives is she wants to go do other things. But the real reason is she got canceled. Okay. It came out that she's kind of a cocksucker to work with. Now, this brings me to a point that I want to talk about. And by the way, I don't know if that's true or false. Again, rumor, innuendo, bullshit. Okay? Human beings have a tendency to do what I call binary thinking. In fact, I don't call it that. Lots of qualified people, like psychologists, call it that. Binary thinking. If it isn't this, it must be that. Okay? So if you're not for me, you're against me, right? So Ellen DeGeneres has fallen into that category. When people look at her, a lot of people feel envy, and that translates into all kinds of. At the minute they see a chink in her armor because she's so wealthy and she's done so well, they want to do her in. Okay, now here's the thing. First of all you see is her successful part of her life, and people who have envy about people like Ellen DeGeneres or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or whoever you are envious of and want to or have participated in saying bad things, you're only seeing that part. You know, you might resent them having that, but would you have worked 80 hours a week that it usually takes as an entrepreneur to get to the point where they are? Would you have destroyed your family life like Bill Gates getting divorced right now from his wife? Would you have inflicted the personal toll? There is a price to be paid to be that successful. And I've known a lot of very wealthy people in my life, and they pay that price. So to understand, most of us would never pay it. I don't want it. You know, I like Techmaster E and I joke about how well we'd like to do with the show sometimes, but none of it has to do with getting super rich. Okay? You know, it's because we don't want to we enjoy our lives, as I'm sure you do, as a stoner, a lot more. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I don't want to take that kind of risk. I don't want to expose my family to all that. I did it. That's how I ended up in fucking prison. I have learned my lesson the hard way. And I'm going to tell you right now, unless you're prepared to, they say behind every great fortune is a great crime. I'm not sure that isn't true. Okay, but Ellen DeGeneres, God bless her, you know, people are just after her because she's Ellen. Leave her the fuck alone. Walk a mile in her shoes. And even if she is mean, imagine what it's like to live in a glass bubble. It could make you mean. I mean, there are plenty of, I understand, for example, that Tom Hanks is as nice as the day is long. I've met Demi Moore. She was as nice as the day's long. I know that she's not around so much. I just dated myself a little bit. But I mean, over the years, I've met famous people, and some are nice and some are mean, just like normal human beings. But the ones that are mean aren't mean all the time. Mean at work doesn't mean that she's mean at, you know what I'm saying, guys? Stop thinking binary. There are lots of ways of looking at things. If you don't like somebody, examine why. Is it for any real reason, or are you just thinking, if she isn't this way, she must be that way? Oh, well, she's mean. She must be a total C word. No, she isn't. Okay. Or we don't know. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But if you don't know, shut the fuck up. That's all I have to say. All right. Anyway. And Ellen, I'd love to have you as a guest on it. Was that self-serving?
No, Ellen.
I'd like to have her on and talk about this at length, you know.
Next story.
I would just tell her that, Ellen, you can come on my show because I'm openly gray. Okay. So, let's see. Chum. Did you like that? All right. Let's see. Start standing up. Oh, yeah. Along the same lines as the Ellen story, this is just an add-on that I added on to today's news when I was going through it this morning. Seth Rogen, who evidently was like a best friend of James Franco, will no longer work with him over this woke shit, too. This is another case of buying it. Look, evidently James Franco fucked around a lot in his younger days. What a surprise. Okay? Did I say that deadpan enough again? Look, boys will be boys. James Franco in his younger days, remember, he got famous in his fucking teens, guys. He probably had overactive testosterone. He probably said things he regrets. He probably did a lot of fucking things. Maybe he really is a shithead. But no evidence has come out of that. This is just innuendo again, rumor and innuendo, and Seth Rogen being a fucking pussy and not standing up for his friend. Now, let me tell you another thing that I think is really important. The only thing, any asshole can be your friend when things are going right. It's when things turn to shit that you find out who your friends are. Okay? So Seth Rogen has proven that he is a shit friend, in my opinion. Now, again, that's binary thinking right there. I don't know. Maybe James, again, just to show you maybe James Franco fucked them over in a movie deal. Maybe they had some dispute over a woman. Who knows that I don't know about. However, if it's just what they're reporting, and they're just talking about Seth Rogen is not going to work with James Franco because James Franco got canceled over things he said, a friend steps up and says, I don't give a fuck. He's my friend. Yeah. Okay? And, you know,
we used to have a lot of that.
There used to be I'm trying to think of an actual instance. I'll give you something that happened to me. There's a congressman, a retired congressman that lives in Tucson. His name is Jim Colby. Jim Colby was the first openly gay Republican congressman. Okay? Now, he's been retired for a long time. I just want to share this story with you because it relates to this. And one day, back in the 1990s, I had a syndicated talk show that was business related. And Jim came on as a guest. And that day, just out of sheer coincidence, while he was in my studio, some publication outed him. He hadn't been out up to that point. And now I'm going to tell you, among the community where we lived in Tucson, Arizona, where he was the congressman, it was an open secret that Jim was gay. Everyone knew it. Okay? When I say everyone of the business community that funded his campaigns, basically. I mean, everyone, every professional, it was just an open secret, okay? And his wife, he had a wife, but she was a lesbian, and it was in the old days, they used to call that a beard. It was really an open, and they had children, but they were adopted Vietnamese children. It was a facade, and everyone knew it. Although, by the way, I knew the Colbys, and they treated those children beautifully, and she was very lovely. It just wasn't a sexual relationship. It was a family, but not a sexually tied family, because both participants were gay. Anyway, to make a long story short, Jim gets outed. Now it's big news, and he's in my studio, and he's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, if I were you, I'd walk out there, and I say, Jim, I love you just the same today as I did yesterday, and so does everybody else. So I'd walk out there, and I'd say, you know what? I'm 55 years old, I'm blue-eyed, I'm bald, and I'm gay, just like I was yesterday. If that's going to be a problem, walk away. And you know what happened? Most people loved him, and he got reelected. And when he retired, it was voluntary. He just got tired of fucking around, okay? But the bottom line is, most people stood by him in those days. Everyone didn't just dump him because they found out that he kept a secret. Today he'd be killed not for being gay, but because he was so, kept it a secret. But he was of a different generation. He was a boomer. Believe me when I tell you that 20 years ago it wasn't so easy to come out. Okay, it just wasn't. Okay, so thank God things have gotten better. There's another reason why life isn't so bad, guys. You don't have to look at everything bad. There's a lot of good things that have gone on, right? So. And that's one of them, okay? So a big one. And the point is, turning on your friends because something bad has happened is cowardly and shitty, okay? And if you think you have a lot of friends, you need to look around and ask yourself how many would stick with you when the shit hits the fan, okay? I know that when I went to prison, I found out exactly how many friends I had. I had 1,000 acquaintances. I had 3 friends, okay? And I think that's pretty typical, okay? That have stuck with me all the way through. Did stick with me all the way through. And thank God my family, thank God, stuck with me all the way through. But guys, it is a revelation. And we do it constantly. Our whole culture now is based on, they said something bad when they were 23. I'll never speak to them again. What the fuck? Okay, anyway. Be a stoner. Have a little room. By the way, people change. I am sure that if you went back in my past and could somehow produce a recording from a time when there were no recordings, you would find me saying stupid fucking things. I can't really remember them, but I'm sure I said them. I'm positive. I grew up in a time where that would have been impossible that I didn't. I'll give you one that I did all the time. All the time. My family and I, being Jews, the old joke is that the Chinese culture is 4,000 years old, Jewish culture is 6,000 years old, so we only had to wait 2,000 years to get Chinese. Jewish people love Chinese food. If you want to find a Jew in a town, find a Chinese restaurant and go in. You'll find it. Jews love Chinese food. Chinese food to a Jew is Jewish food in many ways. Better than a bagel, which is really Polish, by the way. Better than borscht, which is really Russian. We just appropriated Chinese food. We love that shit. On Christmas Day, if you want to find every Jew in the city you live, go to a Chinese restaurant because they'll be open because they're Buddhists and Confucianists and Taoists, right? It's not Christmas, and the Jews will be there too because it's not anything for us either, and we'll all be just sitting there eating egg rolls, right? So, anyway, why am I bringing this up? I don't know. Why was I bringing up the Jews and Chinese? I was going to so bad things I've said. Anyway, we used to go to this restaurant. This was in Pittsburgh, PA. It was called the Tea Garden. And this was our family thing. And we would go once, even twice a week with my Aunt Madeline and Uncle Phil. And we would all go together and have a big dinner around a big round table with the rotating thing in the middle. Jews love that stuff. Jews, there's the old Jewish joke, about the Jew that goes into the restaurant and says, this food is terrible. And any other problems? Yeah, the portions are so small. Anyway, so I'm allowed to tell that joke, okay? So anyway, bottom line is we called the restaurant the Chinks for years. I thought the name of the restaurant was the Chinks. I had no idea that Chink was a derogatory term for Chinese person. And I apologize for ever saying it, but I said it as a child. Now, if you're going to hold it against me, now that I know that I would never call the Chinese person a chink, for Christ's sake, okay, is that to be held against me for the rest of my life? Because in my childhood, I used a pejorative term. I'll tell you another pejorative term, Tech Mastery. I'll admit it to your face. I called black people Schwarzes for years. Schwarzes. It's the Yiddish term. It means blacks. It literally means blacks. But it has a negative connotation. So I stopped using it. Okay? Now, it's not the N-word, but I stopped using it out of respect for all of my friends who are black. Okay? And not that, even if they're not my friends, I just black people in general. Okay? Any more than I don't want to be called a he, but I don't think they want to be called a Schwarzes. So I stopped. But I did. Now, should I be canceled forever? You're going to cancel the entire Jewish religion. I got news for you. I don't know a Jew in the world that didn't use Schwarz until about 20 years ago. And then we all just dropped it, mostly because it was disrespectful. And as a minority, we felt that kind of thing. But, you change. People change. Anyway, I move on. Enough of the news. I thought it was pretty impassioned today. When I picked these stories, I was more giggling, but then it got impassioned as I thought about it. Anyway, what the fuck? I'm stoned, guys. I don't know what to tell you. I ramble, I go. Hang in there. All right. Today, speaking of Jews, we're going to talk about Silver Stoner history. Now, this is the Stoner is cool, man. And remember, we're creating a community of the open and creative. Open means you can listen to every point of view. So I am now today going to do something that you've never had done before, not in school, not in college, not in any of the social media places that you can fight this out. I'm going to discuss, because of what's going on in the Middle East right now, I'm going to discuss the Palestinian-Israeli conflict without taking sides. Okay, even as a Jew, I can do that. Now, I want to start by saying both sides have a point. This is where we talk about not being binary in how we think. Okay, so I'm only going to discuss facts because facts are not subject to perspective. Then I'm going to stop. I'm not going to sum this up and tell you who to like or not like. You decide for yourself. I'm just going to talk about what's going on and what's been going on and why both sides think they're right. Because clearly both sides think they're right. And you know what? If you were to ask me the question, who's right, the Israelis or the Palestinians, I'd say yes. I mean, they have a lot of good points both ways. I mean, this is a bunch of people fighting it out that ought to be able to talk it out. But anyway, here's the history of the conflict. Number one, there never was a Palestine. Now, that just happens to be a fact. The area was called Palestine, but this chart that is coming up on your screen right now, and I'll provide the link for you down below, is from 586 BCE. BCE is before the Common Era. That's just the way people who aren't Christians say before Christ. Okay? So starting at 586 before the Common Era, the Babylonians and Persians held it. They gave it up to the Greeks. Hellenistic is a fancy word for Greeks. Okay, the Greeks ran it until 37 BCE, about 300 years. They took it over in 332. Then the Romans stepped in and they ran it from 37 BC. This is the time of Jesus, until 324 after Jesus. Here it says CE, which is Common Era, but let's just call it the year 324. Then the Byzantines stepped in from 324 to 638. Then there was a period of they call it the early Arab period, but this wasn't local people running their country. This was emperors. It would be as if Hitler won all of Europe and called it Germany. It wasn't a country. It was still just part of another Arab empire. And also not just Arab. This is left out of this chart, which I took off Wikipedia, by the way. Also the Kurds at the time. Saladin, the very famous guy who finally, right after the early Arab Empire, came the Crusaders, who ran the joint for a couple of hundred years until 1291. Then another Arab period led by Saladin, who was not an Arab, he was a Kurd. That's just a historic fact. He was Kurdish. Okay, and they ran the show until 1516 when the Ottomans took over, which is a fancy word for Turks. That was Turkey. And the Turkish Empire lasted until World War I when the British took over. And then the British ran it until 1948 when they gave it to the Jews in return for the Jews fighting for Britain against the Turks in World War I. That was the deal that they made. There was a big Jewish army that was fighting for the Allies in World War I that fought in the Middle East. Jews have been there the whole time the Palestinian Arabs have. They were Palestinian Jews that lived on the same land, and then they fought. And so the British made a deal. It was called the Balfour Declaration because Lord Balfour was the Prime Minister of England. And he made a deal that if you fight for us here, we'll give you your Israel later. And they did in 1948 after the Holocaust basically shamed them into it. Now, so how did this happen? How did the Jews and Arabs divide? Because the fact of the matter is there are today living in Israel about 4 million Israeli Arabs. Israel is the only country in the Middle East where Arabs live in a democratically elected country, serve in the parliament, and are protected by their constitution and vote in free and fair elections. It's the only country in the Middle East where Arabs do that. Right now, today, Israel is in the midst of a constitutional crisis where they're trying to form a government, and the guy that holds all the cards is a guy whose last name is Abbas, who's the head of an Arab party. He's going to be part of the government, and he's going to pick who he wants to be with, and whoever he picks is going to be the leader of Israel, with Arabs serving in the government. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's true. So why did so many Arabs run out and end up where they are today, in exile and living in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank and then all over the world, but not in the Palestinian area, not in Israel, which is just the modern name of what was once the Palestinian desert, okay? And the answer is a guy called the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Now, this guy, the Grand Mufti, is the villain of this story. His name was Amin al-Husseini, and he was appointed the Grand Mufti by the Jordanian king at the time, and this guy was a flat-out Nazi, okay? He was a Hitler collaborator in the Second World War. He was a rabid Jew hater, and he broadcast at the time of the partition in 1948 to anyone who would listen that they have to run because the Jews are going to make matzah out of the blood of your children and are going to slaughter Arabs wholesale in a mass genocide. Of course, they did not, and the Arabs who stayed on their property still live on their property and have lived happily ever after and speak Hebrew and live in Israel. And by the way, I've been to Israel, and if you ever want to go, you can meet plenty of Arabs who are just Israeli Arabs. I'm not saying that they have the same tensions we do in our own racial issues that more around Jews and Arabs, and yes, there's, just like we talk about white privilege in the United States, if you're an Arab living in Israel, there's a Jewish majority. By the way, what we call white privilege is actually majority privilege. If you go to any country in the world, whatever's the majority population is going to control, just by default, right? If you went to China, they're not going to make laws for you. They're going to make laws for all the Chinese, right? If you went to live in Japan, you're going to find out right away what cultural differences are. So, I've lived in Mexico. It's run for the Mexicans, not for the gringos living there part-time. It's majority privilege. No matter what color the majority is, the majority rules. So yes, there are issues between Israeli Arabs as a minority, but they're not a small minority. There are about 8 million Jews in Israel and about 4 million Arabs. So it's not like here in the United States where, for example, black people are 13% of the population. In Israel, they're 33% of the population. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that. Now, so this guy, the Grand Mufti, this al-Husseini guy, broadcast this, and basically the educated people stayed where they were and the uneducated people ran. And that's what you're seeing today, the people that ran. Now, the dispute that's taking place today it's called the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. And this is a classic dispute that you decide what you think. I'm just going to give you, what started was this case going to the Israeli Supreme Court. Now, in East Jerusalem, Israel was attacked in 1967. Israel then counterattacked in what was called the Six-Day War and took Jerusalem. Until then, Jerusalem under the 1948 plan was cut into two pieces, East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. When Israel fought the Six-Day War, it took East Jerusalem and all of the West Bank, which it has since given back as part of the Palestinian territories, but it kept Jerusalem whole. Now, when they took East Jerusalem, a lot of Jewish businessmen and people went into East Jerusalem and began buying property that they could not buy before because it's just business, wouldn't you? And they bought property that dated back, the original deeds were under the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks, okay? And they bought a lot of apartment buildings and things. And some of those apartment buildings are in this dispute. So the Israeli owners of these apartment buildings want to basically knock them down and rebuild them as something newer and better, just like they do in New York City every day and blah, blah, blah. The Arab tenants who have been there for many, many generations but never owned it are screaming foul. These are the Jews taking our property. But the deed was held by Turks and was bought legally from the Turks by the Jews when they took, you understand? So the dispute is, does living in a property for 40 years as a tenant make you an owner? And I'll leave it to you to decide if that is true. Okay, there's a lot of mitigating factors, and I understand that. And I understand the Turks were an occupying power and everything else. It's much the same as sooner or later, the Castros are going to lose power in Cuba. And there are millions of Cubans in Miami, because I grew a part of my childhood there, who lost property and homes and things when they left Cuba. Now, the question is, will they be able to go back to Cuba and reclaim their property because they'll be able to produce legal deeds that said they owned it then? Or, since the communist revolution in the late 1950s, do they still own their property at all? It's the same issue. And it needs to be resolved. But you can see at least both sides of the story. I can. Now, that's where I'm going to leave this whole discussion. Now what's happened is it's turned into this big, just like in our country, we can overreact to things that, for example, a police shooting will cause a riot. Okay, that's what's going on here. Okay, in a country, remember how little Israel is. The whole country is about the size of New Jersey. Okay, it's a teeny little country. So what you're seeing are riots caused by a local event. I gave you the local event. I'm not going to tell you what my opinion is. You decide for yourself. That's what's at the center of this. That's why now you know why Palestinians don't live in Israel. Now you know why there's a dispute. And it all centers around the same issue, which is called right of return. The Palestinians who ran away in 1948 because the Grand Mufti told them to hit the road now want to come back to Israel. This is why they won't make a deal with Israel and reclaim their land that they never held title to. The Jews who bought the land from the Ottoman Turks and the British after that are saying to themselves, but we own the land, okay? And we're not giving it back. You decide who's right and who's wrong. You decide this is the heart of it, okay? There was never a Palestine, but they lived there for a long time. Now, does living there for a long time equal ownership? That's the issue. That's the fight. That's what causes all this shit. I'm going to leave it at that. Now you understand. Now you have an open mind. You're an intelligent stoner. You can think about it on your own and decide where you come down. But it's not about good people. It's not binary. It's not good Jews and bad Palestinians or good Palestinians and bad Jews. It's all good people and bad people like we all are. We all have good and evil in us, and they have a legitimate dispute. I've given you the outline of it, but everyone is thinking the Jews are binary thinkers and the Palestinians are binary, and they're just yelling at each other. And we need to get outside that binary. We need to do what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Start changing your behavior to change your thoughts. Change your behavior. Try hugging a Palestinian, Israelis. Palestinians, try hugging an Israeli. I know it's like saying hug a tree. I know, I'm talking to myself. I'll move on. All right, moving right along. The Silver Stoners, I want to talk to you about the Silver Stoners' problems that can wait. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on right now economically in our country, kickstarting after COVID. President Senile has said that, and before him, President Orange Man was no different, okay, that we have to throw trillions and trillions of dollars to kickstart the economy because we basically self-inflicted a depression upon the world. That's what we did. Now, we covered up. The reason you don't think it was a depression is because we've printed up trillions of dollars to cover the whole goddamn thing up. But that's what we've done. We have voluntarily thrown the world into a depression, and now we're trying to kickstart it out, when really what we should do is fucking nothing. And you're all seeing the results of it today. Inflation is at 6%. The Fed 2 weeks ago said it wouldn't get higher than 3%. Then they said inflation was temporary. For those of you,
It's going to go higher?
of course, and there's no such thing as temporary inflation. Look, let's not think about the big economic bullshit, guys. When the price of bread goes from let's see, what do I buy? I buy Nature's Recipe. I'll use my bread. I just like their bread. A loaf of Nature's Recipe I generally buy at Safeway for $1.99 a loaf. Okay, 6 months ago it was $1.49. Okay, it's never going back to $1.49. Never. There's no, temporary. What they're talking about is the rate of. They think the rate of inflation is going to slow down. Which, if they spend more money, it won't. I'll explain that in a minute. But how it affects you, I'm not going to point at you. I got to stop myself from that pointing shit. I'm going to point you. Okay, I don't mean to point at you guys. Let's try our prices aren't going down, guys. You know, this Starbucks peach green tea lemonade that I'm drinking here, which, by the way, is fucking delicious. You got to love Starbucks. Anyway, it isn't going down. Once the price goes up, with the exception of gasoline, which fluctuates all over the fucking place, which I'll get to in a minute, the prices aren't going down, okay? So here's the deal. Inflation is caused when you put too much money to chase too few goods. So in other words, we caused this global depression. Let me put this in English. We being not just America, all the governments of the world. I don't care if you were a German or a Swiss or an Italian or a Chinese or a Japanese or a Korean, whatever your background was, the governments of the world almost uniformly, with the exception of, I think, Mozambique, who said it was a plague from God. I'm not even going there. And by the way, that guy died. Now the new president said, no, it's a disease. And she's much smarter than the last guy, and she's pulling it together from Mozambique. So I digress. Back on subject. So even Mozambique now is doing the same thing. They basically shut down, you know it, I know it, threw the world into a Great Depression. And then threw tons of money at it. But what they did in shutting down the economy is they shut down production. And it doesn't turn off and on like a water spigot. Okay, you know, you can turn off the hot water and you can turn on the hot water, but you can't turn off an economy and turn on an economy. For example, gasoline prices now have skyrocketed, and that's just not inflation. That's the idiocy of President Senile shutting down a major pipeline. Forget the Colonial Pipeline project that's over in the South that was just hacked. It's back online as of this morning. I'm talking about the Keystone Pipeline, which wasn't even operating, but you see, commodity prices trade on futures. And the senile administration, okay, futures means the future price of things. There are these places in the world. Okay, I better explain this, shouldn't I, Techmaster E? Okay, Techmaster, this could get technical. So as I go into it,
I'll pull you back.
well, don't just pull me back. Ask, be the listener. Okay, the viewer. Okay. Commodities and futures are the same thing. You've heard about commodities traders and futures traders. Okay, these markets. To contrast them with the stock market, that I know all of you are at least familiar with exists. In the stock market, you can have a winner without a loser. Okay, that's what makes the stock market such a cool thing if you understand it. So in other words, if you bought the stock, Starbucks was the biggest fuck up I ever made as a money manager, by the way. I'm going to admit the major fuck up, okay, was Starbucks that I patronized today. Because when Starbucks first came out, and I am well old enough to have gone to the first Starbucks early on, and I went in there for the first time, and paid a few dollars for a cup of coffee, my reaction was, what the fuck? I can go over to Dunkin' Donuts and get this for 99 cents. Fuck this. I'm not buying stock in this company. And boy, was I wrong. I completely misunderstood the value proposition of this company. Value proposition is the fancy way of saying what makes it great. What makes it great is you can't get a peach green tea lemonade at fucking Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I completely misunderstood Starbucks. Anyway, listen, we all live with our mistakes. You live and you learn. But the point is, if you had been smarter than me and had bought Starbucks way back in the day when it first came out, and you didn't sell it, you'd be a rich motherfucker. And to be that rich motherfucker, there was nobody else who had to lose. Dunkin' Donuts is still in business. Okay?
McDonald's went to coffee.
McDonald's added it on. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Okay? By the way, McCafe is pretty good, but they still don't make. If I want a cup of coffee, I go to McCafe for the value. But if I want a peach green tea lemonade, I go to Starbucks. That's me. You do what you want. Okay, so anyway, the point is it's a free market. That's the whole point. You'd be rich, but nobody lost to make you rich. If you had bought Microsoft back in the 90s when no one knew who the fuck it was, you would be a billionaire if you put like $10,000 in it, okay, and didn't do shit with it. And nobody had to lose for that to happen. That's called created value. That's how the stock market works. Now, it can also go down. Let's not be schmucky about it. Okay? But all in all, for there to be a winner, there doesn't have to be a loser. Okay? And if you lose, it doesn't come out of anybody else's pocket but yours. So if you own a stock in a company that's going down the shitter like, let me think of it. Oh, like WeWork is dangling on the precipice. Okay, they might survive, but let's just use them as an example. And you've lost money on their stock. Nobody else, you lost your money. It didn't affect anybody else, right? It didn't affect Regis, who does the same fucking thing a different way. It had no effect on its competition. No one had to pay your loss, right? That's the beauty of it. Now in the futures markets, it's a casino. And there has to be a winner for every loser. But what it really is an insurance market. Now let me explain that. I'm going to take it down to simple. Let's pretend that you are an oat farmer in the American Midwest, somewhere out there.
Disclaimer, this is not anything of how to invest.
Oh, no. Oh, let me begin this by saying never invest without doing a lot of research. And sure as shit, don't listen to me without double checking me. And triple sure as shit, talk to your own advisors. And quadruple sure as shit, you don't belong in the futures market because there has to be a loser for every winner. And unless you know what the fuck you're doing, it is a quick way to lose every nickel you ever made. I'm just explaining what it is so that you understand why gas prices.
Not advice.
No, fuck no. Do not invest based on this at all. Now, in our Patreon, we're going to have an investment forum. Okay, and I'll talk about real investments that, by the way, still, we will never sell an investment. We will never represent an investment. We will never take advertising money from an investment company. When I discuss this with you, it's because I'm clean. Okay, no commissions, no fees, no under the tables, no nothing. No advertisers, nothing. Okay, I will not take money from financial firms. Now, having said that, let me give you this little bit of education. And this will probably be the most honest bit of financial education you've had today anyway. Okay, so you're an oat farmer in the American Midwest. You're living out in Kansas somewhere. You're growing oats. General Mills makes Cheerios. I'm going to use this because it's such an easy example, but it works on everything, okay? Now, every year, General Mills executives sit down in an office somewhere, and they do their annual budget planning. I'm sure those of you who work in businesses have all done forecasts for the year. You want to, you know, we've done it for this station. You know, what do we think? Where do we think we're going to be? Where do we think we're going to make? How much money? You know, it won't turn out that way. The only thing you know about a plan is it won't turn out that way, but you still plan, right? Because you have to have some track to run on so that you have some idea how to make business decisions going forward. It's just good management. So over at General Mills, they do this, of course. But the biggest component of Cheerios is oats. Now, how do they know that oats won't do what gasoline just did and pop up 25, 35, 40% right in the middle of the year because didn't get enough rain, wildfires, you know, crops are subject to all kinds of shit. My family was in the produce business, and we imported produce from Mexico and Nogales. I spoke about that yesterday when I was talking to Adrian Cisneros Aguilar. But, you know, we used to pray for, like, shitty weather in Florida because it made the Mexican tomatoes go through the roof price-wise, because if Florida wasn't growing, then the only place to get tomatoes was Mexico. So, you know, weather has a huge part of it. All right, so how does General Mills make their predictions? Well, they go into the futures markets. There are two kinds of peoples in the futures. There are two kinds of players, let's say, in the futures markets: hedgers and speculators. General Mills is the speculator. The farmer is the hedger. Now, the farmer is out there in let's say, liberal Kansas. And the only reason I say liberal Kansas is it's the home of the Wicked Witch of the West from the Wizard of Oz, the actress that played her and later became the Maxwell House coffee lady. I only know this because when I fly across country as a pilot, I often stop in liberal Kansas to refuel because it's halfway. It's like the dead.
Right in the middle.
Plus, there's a Wendy's that they'll lend you the crew car from the airport. You can drive to the Wendy's that's nearby, and I love a Baconator. Okay, so, and in the Wendy's, by the way, in liberal Kansas, guys, you can write in and tell me this, there are pictures of the Wicked Witch of the West all around the Wendy's. It's really, really cool. Anyway, so let's say you're an oat farmer in liberal Kansas. And it seems to be a nice town, by the way, having driven through it in the crew car to go to Wednesdays. Okay, so anyway, and you have you're worried that you've borrowed money to put the seed in the ground. You've borrowed money to buy your equipment. The farmer. You have all this overhead that you have to meet, and so you have to get a certain amount of money for your oat crop. But if the price moves against you because there's a glut of oats, you know, the Chinese are flooding the market with cheap oats or some bullshit like that, that's another thing, foreign competition. You never know. You got to hedge your bets. That's where the word hedger comes from. So what the farmer does is he bets, he goes to the futures markets, and he buys what's called a put, okay? That's betting on the price going down, okay? Now, here's where I could lose you, so I'm going to go slow. If the price of oats goes down, he wins his bet. If the price of oats stays the same or goes up, he loses what's called the premium, just like an insurance premium. Okay, that's what that's called. When you make the put, you're betting on the down, or the call, you're betting on the up. You've heard of puts and calls? One's up, one's down. That's all. Bet up, bet down. He's betting that the price is going to go down when he will put that to the market and win to offset his losses from his growing. Get it? He's insuring his crop by putting a put on it, betting against it. And if he loses, just like the best insurance is the one you never use. So, like, for example, I know that many of you watching me are buying automobile insurance every month, right? Everybody is. I think it's the mandatory law everywhere, right? And if you're under 18 and watching this show, turn it the fuck off right now, okay? So I'm assuming that everybody here is over 18. We're stoners, and we buy car insurance because we're required to. Do you want to use it? I don't want to use my fucking car insurance. Do you want to use your fucking car insurance? No. So so the premium is money out the window, isn't it?
Correct.
And the premium is based on the risk, and I won't go into that. We'll talk about that another day. But that's all that a futures bet is on the put. So the farmer is hoping he loses. Yeah, he writes off the premium as a business expense, just like a business owner would write off health insurance premiums for himself and his employees. But he wins because he gets it on his product. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there's good old General Motors. They're the speculator. They'll take that. General Mills. I said Motors, didn't I? Your General Mills. General Motors, by the way, does this exact same thing with steel and aluminum. Okay, it's the same fucking thing. There isn't a product in the world that you can't do this with, literally. Okay, now they're going to be the speculator. They'll take that bet. Okay, now if the price of oats goes up, they're going to win that bet, which will offset their cost, which will keep the price of Cheerios the same. Okay, and if they lose the bet, they still win. I mean, they're the insurance company, and the farmer is you. That's all the futures markets are, is a giant insurance market for people that produce something against losing it. And there are people out there now you can take that bet too as a speculator, and you can also lose your ass. Now, the richest guy I know, who shall go nameless because I do not have his permission to use his name, made $1 billion playing futures, and he's the only guy I've ever known that walked away. It's so addictive. It's a gambling thing, and you can play any kind of future. You can play oats, and you can play pork bellies, and you can play oranges, and you can play steel, and you can play currencies. You can bet on the dollar. You can bet on the Swiss franc. You can bet on the yen. You can bet on anything. That's why it's a casino. And now you can bet on crypto. Now you can trade. Now, why do the futures markets, why are they there? To provide price stability. In the end, how we all benefit is that we get stable prices. But when the government throws, back to inflation, a bunch of money in to the markets, when there's no production, because they shut it all down, that money has to go somewhere. And it's soaked up in prices like water is soaked up by a sponge. You got too much water on your counter, you soak it up with a sponge. That's inflation, guys. And that's what we're doing. We are pumping trillions of dollars into an economy that's not producing at the level it was, and it can't just start up. You can't just, this is where President Senile just doesn't seem to get it. So why is gas up? Because by shutting down the production of the Keystone Pipeline, he can reverse himself. For example, yesterday, he renewed, I don't know if anyone, did you catch this story? They're building the border wall again.
Yeah, it's turned back on.
Yeah, they turned it back on. Why? Because he fucked up. Okay, they're flooding across the border from Venezuela. So it got like no press coverage, but they're rebuilding the border wall. Well, even if he tomorrow decided I really fucked up, this is not going to help my popularity if gas goes to $4 a gallon, which it's going to, because the future price of gas is being affected by the current shutting off of the pipeline. You get it? Get it? Futures. It's not real time, but plus he hates fracking. Now, let me tell you guys. There's a lot of bullshit around fracking, and one day I'll talk about that at length. But I'll tell you a fact. Fracking has made us energy independent for the first time in 100 years. America, when it's fully fracking and doing things, does not need Arab oil or anybody else's. Okay? However, President Biden doesn't seem to like that, and he's going after he's forbidden new fracking on federal land. Well, this is all playing into the futures markets, and this is why your gas is going up. There's an effect for everything. So, but even if President Biden tomorrow said, "Whoops, I fucked up," you can reopen the pipeline and refrac. It'll take a year or more to bring that capacity back online because all the equipment's been shut down. It's not like it's just ready. It's not like you turn on that. It's a big fucking deal to get an oil well producing again, especially when you're fracking in, which is horizontal and drilling fluids and all kinds of shit. Look, guys. It's just not as simple as the world is not a simple place. And this is why we go back to the 5 tenets. The best thing to do, 999 times out of 1,000 is nothing. What should President Senile done when he took office? He should have settled down the chaos of the Orange Man, become a very Eisenhower-like president that everybody likes, and serve his 8 years calmly if he lives that long. God bless him. I hope he does. Okay? That's not what he did. He's fucking around. And he's fucking around in things he doesn't understand. This man, remember, his active years, when his brain was working, was the 1970s that we're living in right now. Again.
What does the viewer do?
What the viewer does is you buy crypto, gold, and silver because there's not a fucking thing you can do about the government. It's not going to matter who you vote for. Vote for whatever party you like. I'm not here. I don't give a shit about your politics, but I'm telling you to protect yourself financially. I'm telling you right now, buy gold, silver, and crypto. Bitcoin, Ethereum would be the two I'd recommend. But again, do your own research. Again, not recommending, just giving you, not advice, just giving you some ideas. Now, I'm an unconventional thinker, guys. The silver stoner thinks, I'm a stoner, man. I am open and creative. I think way outside the box. And you might have a very traditional advisor who says to you, that guy is, plus the guy fucking went to prison. That's me he's talking about. So you don't want to fucking listen to him. I get it. I understand. Then don't listen to me. Look, I don't care. One way or the other. But I do care. Just do your own thinking. Learn your own facts. Make your own decisions. Listen to qualified people, but don't be Don't be controlled. Only you are in control of your mind and your thoughts. And that's how I'm going to leave the show today. You know, we covered a lot today, didn't we? Okay, I think that I have stuffed your brain full of enough. I feel preachy today. I feel like I should tell a joke or something. Should I tell a joke? Should I just let you go? All right, I'll tell a joke another day. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a stoner. Thank you for giving me the time. Thank you for listening at least. And until next time, this is the Silver Stoner. Peace out.
You're listening to the Silver Stoner Show.